if you're new to the tutoring business space and you've kind of learning all these businessy concepts and you've heard of a sales funnel, you have no idea what it is, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what a sales funnel is and how it applies to your tutoring business. And how I'm going to illustrate what a sales funnel is through an analogy of just a water filtration system, right? Let's imagine two different water filtration systems. Let's imagine the first one, which is just a water filtration system that does nothing. Okay? So the water filtration system does nothing. What happens? You get all the water, so you get the water rushing in, and then you still have all these particles in the water, right? The water filtration system did nothing. And you just keep all the water, you keep as much water as possible. Let's say 1 liter goes in, 1 liter comes out, plus all the particles that you don't want in your filter system. That's what happens if you have a filtration system which does nothing. Compared to if you had a filtration system like this, let's say it's a narrow one to represent a finer funnel where 1 liter of water goes in and there's different steps of filtration. Let's say there's 3 different steps of filtration. Let's say F1, F2, and F3 for 3 different steps of the filtration system. 1 liter might go in and 500 mils might come out because the filtration process has to remove some of the water. So your water will have less particles. Let's say it has 1 particle at the end, but it only has 500 mils of water plus a single particle, a single dirt particle or something like that. I got no idea. Anyway, what this analogy is trying to illustrate is that a funnel can either do nothing and leave you with all the mess, but it gives you as much result as possible. Like it gives you the most amount of gross product, but it has all the particles. Or you can have a finer funnel, which reduces the amount of output that you get, but you get less of this mess. So you get less of these particles. There's more filtration. There is therefore less of the noise that you don't actually want. This is exactly what a sales funnel is doing. This is exactly what a sales funnel does. You can either have a no funnel where it does nothing and you get left with all this noise and all these things, or you can have a sales funnel where it does filter out a lot of people, but whatever's left is quite high quality. That's the idea behind a sales funnel. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be equating or converting this water into the clients and imagining what's actually happening with the sales funnel. What would be happening with the sales funnel if you have no filtration system with your audience and you just let the audience members come through to you? Then what's going to happen is you're going to get a lot of freeloaders. In this case, freeloaders is just like a colloquial way of just saying people who are just time wasters and they just want something for free. They want free advice. They want free resources. It's those types of people who aren't actually interested genuinely in your service, in your tutoring service. So if you have no sort of filtration system, these people are going to be wasting your time, clogging up your calendar, and it's not going to be actually making you any money with your tutoring business. So that's what happens if you have no filtration. But it does give you the most amount of potential leads. It just doesn't give you the highest quality leads. So let's say you have 100 people, right? And out of these 100 people, there's going to be a certain amount that are just time wasters. Then you might have 5 people at the end of this process buying, but you might be spending 20 hours on time wasters that are just like lost. That's just lost time completely. So this is annoying because that's 20 hours you could spend nurturing a different audience that could bring you more results in. That's why it's quite annoying. Now, let's say you had 100 people and you filtered it down. So 100 people and you filtered it down to, let's say, 50 people in some sort of way, some sort of fashion. 50 people can be sifted down to 25 people. Now, 25 people, out of the 25 people, it could be exactly the same audience and you could still end up with 5 people buying. But the advantage of this is that you spent only 1 hour with time wasters. That's the advantage of having a sales funnel. What happens is that the 100 people is filtered down slowly and slowly to filter out the time wasters. It doesn't waste your time. It doesn't waste their time. They might be still getting something out of it, but essentially you're filtering down the people using certain steps that eventually filters down to the same 5 people buying. But the advantage is that you don't have to deal with all the time wasting. The time wasting people are dealt with for the most part. It's no guarantee that you deal with all of them, but for the most part, it's dealt with during this funnel process. Now, the question is, how do you actually do this process? It's a very complicated process that I break down in a completely separate video. I've got a full breakdown about my whole tutoring business strategy, and part of that is the sales funnel that I talk about in there. But the overall idea of a sales funnel is essentially this. You're filtering down people in certain ways to get rid of time wasters. And not only that, which I'm going to talk about this in the next part of the video, it doesn't only get rid of time wasters, but it also helps nurture that audience that are already on the fence or kind of keen about your product as well. I just stopped inside of this video so I can redraw the same diagram neatly, but what I have here is no sales funnel process. It goes from 100 initial leads, so 100 initial leads, to 5 clients who actually pay you. Now, in the previous example, in the above part of the video, I talked about how the sales funnel process could get you the same amount of clients, but it just saves a lot of time. But what realistically would happen with the sales funnel is that these additional steps builds a relationship with the audience member or the leads that you're talking to. So let's say you filter down 100 leads to 50 leads in a certain way using a sales funnel process. Again, full breakdown in the description. Those 50 leads get filtered down to 25 leads. Now, and these 25 leads get filtered out to a certain amount of paying clients. I've used the example of 10 paying clients, essentially just a number that's higher than 5. 10 is higher than 5, of course. But essentially the reason why this is the case is during the filtering process, something happens called nurturing. You're essentially nurturing your leads. Now, I made a completely different video about this. It's called the lead warming process. Essentially, you're taking a lead and you're warming them up. This is what a sales funnel essentially does on top of filtering out the time wasters as well. You're nurturing your audience. They're building a relationship with you. You're giving them stuff. You're building a connection with them. And eventually, they're more likely to be sold on your final service. If you're just going from 100 leads without a funneling process, you're trying to get 5 clients out of that, or you're trying to get a certain amount of clients out of that, it's not going to be easy to sell them because they have no real relationship with you. During the funnel process, they build a relationship with you, if you build in the right way, of course, and that would eventually lead you to having more clients. So there's 2 advantages of having a sales funnel that we've discovered now. The first one is that it deals with time wasters. That is super important because time wasters, as the name suggests, are waste your time. You don't want to be wasting your time on time wasters. You want to be spending time with people who are genuinely going to or potentially going to join you as clients. The second advantage it has is that it increases conversion percentage. And don't just take my word for it. Don't just take my, what I'm saying to be true. During my business, having a sales funnel process genuinely increased my conversion completely, because at the start of the business, without a sales funnel, I was converting hardly anyone, almost a 0% percentage. But when I had a sales funnel process, my first proper funnel that I set up from end to end without any mistakes, it took a long time to get there, a lot of learning, but this is exactly what I teach my tutoring business clients. It went from 400 leads, sifted down to 80, and then from there, it sifted out to 50 paying clients. Literally from 400 leads to 80 in the middle step of the process, in the middle step of the funnel, to 50 paying clients at the end, without dealing with a huge amount of time with time wasters because the funnel dealt with them already. This is what we want to be aiming for with your business. Originally, very low conversion rate. But once I was able to get leads and then also manage them, I was able to get in a lot of leads in the top of funnel, at the top here, and then sift them out properly, and then convert as many as possible towards the end. And it might not seem like a really high conversion. 400 to 50 in the long run. What's that as a percentage? That would be about, I don't know, whatever percentage that is. I think it's about 20%. I have no idea, 12% conversion or something like that. It doesn't really matter what the conversion is. All that matters is that I did end up selling a certain amount of clients, but it might seem like a relatively low percentage, but it's actually not, because these leads, most of them will be time wasters. Most of them will just be wanting something for free. Most of them are just kind of investigating more. They might be somewhat resonating with your message, but to get from 400 potential leads to 50 clients is genuinely good because the sales funnel process was fully automatic. So this was a fully automatic funnel, which meant that it didn't matter how many leads I was actually dealing with and how many leads I was wasting, because there was still 50 clients joining at the end of the day without a huge amount of input time. Now, just as a summary, you need to be setting up a sales funnel if you want to streamline the lead management process, because not only will you be dealing with time wasters in the most efficient way possible without wasting your time, but you'll be able to convert more leads that actually come into your business and come into contact with you. But you just need to make sure that when you set up your sales funnel, that you're doing it in a way that's automatic. You don't need to be putting in a lot of active effort in order to run your funnel process. You need to be implementing it in an automatic way. And if you implement your funnel in an automatic way, you can go from the results that I was getting from literally no conversion all the way up into a point where you're getting 15 to 20% conversion with a process where you won't really be, you won't be putting in a lot of input time into. So make sure that you set up your funnel in the right way from the start, build it up bit by bit, and as you progress it, you'll be able to find the efficiencies, find the inefficiencies, and then fine tune it from there.